The film begins with 63-year-old Otto Anderson picking up some rope at a hardware store. At the checkout, he grumbled to the cashier about being charged a few extra cents for the length of his rope. He then asked to see the manager, but since he was at lunch, he had to speak to the assistant manager instead. A classic male Karen move, right? Otto lived in a small neighborhood and was known for being a bit of a grump and a stickler for rules, like making sure the gate on his street stayed closed and that parking permits were actually hung on rearview mirrors. Still, some neighbors, like Jimmy, tried to reach out to him, even though Otto thought most people were idiots.
Tell that useless boyfriend of yours.
On his last day at work, Otto found out his co-workers had thrown him a retirement party, but Otto wasn't into it at all. Afterwards, he returned home and shut down everything in his house, cutting off the electricity and disconnecting the phone. In the end, he used the rope he bought, planning to end his life. But just as he was about to do it, some new neighbors moved in. They were super noisy while parking their car, which annoyed him. Otto rushed outside and ran into the Mendez family, Marisol, a pregnant woman, and her husband Tommy. Tommy was struggling to park, so Otto ended up helping them out, though grudgingly. He got into the car and found their daughters, Luna and Abby, in the back seat.
Otto.
Once he finished, Otto went back home.
Okay, bye, thank you.
A few minutes later, Marisol brought over a Mexican dish to thank Otto. They introduced themselves properly. Marisol was super talkative and friendly, while Otto was the complete opposite. Tommy, who worked as an IT consultant, wanted to borrow an Allen wrench. Otto corrected him, saying it was an Allen wrench, and they ended up debating whether it was Alvin or Allen. "What do you guys call it, anyway?" Otto opened the lunchbox, smelled it, and tried the food. To his surprise, it was so delicious. After that, he tried to end his life again. As he was hanging himself, his life started flashing before his eyes.
Dependable. Not enough you can depend on in this world.
But suddenly, he crashed to the floor because the hook holding the noose broke, thankfully. While he was down, he spotted an ad for discounted flower bouquets. Otto decided to visit the grave of his wife, Sonia, and took the flowers with him. He talked to her as if she were right there, telling her about a new neighbor, debating about Allen wrench, and ranting about greedy real estate developers from a company called Dying America, which he sarcastically pointed out sounded like Dying America. At night, Otto thought back to when he was younger. He had failed the army's physical exam because of hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, a heart condition he inherited from his father, who had died from it. On his way back to Pittsburgh, Otto noticed Sonia drop her book as she headed for her train. He chased after her and boarded the same train. He finally found her and handed back the book, which led to them striking up a conversation. He was already smitten, but then realized he was on the wrong train. Sonia gave him some change for a new ticket and let him keep the change, a silver quarter he still has. The next morning, Otto returned the lunchbox, shoveled his walk, and then patrolled the neighborhood like he usually did. He bumped into his friendly neighbor, Jimmy, who invited him over for lunch. He spotted an unfamiliar car and told the driver it was a private road with gates to keep out idiots who might drive around and tear up the grass. It turned out the driver was a real estate agent from Dying America who sarcastically said he'd have the groundskeepers fix any damage, as if he was doing Otto a big favor. Otto saw a neighbor he disliked throwing rocks at a feral cat for scratching her dog and threatening to kill it, claiming the cat was probably full of diseases. Otto said she might be full of diseases too, but he didn't throw rocks at her. Tommy and Marisol came by again, returning Otto's Allen wrench and bringing Salvadoran cookies. They also asked to borrow his ladder. Meanwhile, another neighbor, Anita, mentioned she and her husband had no heat and asked Otto to check it out. Otto initially refused and suggested she try bleeding her radiators. Later, Otto agreed to help Anita, but only if she returned the garden hose he had lent her over the summer. Anita mentioned that Otto might be getting new neighbors soon because the real estate agents told her and Ruben to move out. Otto thought that was weird since they owned the house. Anita also revealed their son Chris suggested putting Ruben in a care facility and moving her into a retirement home. Otto held a grudge against Anita's husband, Ruben, because he felt Ruben had wronged him in the past. Ruben was mostly incapacitated and had limited movement. Despite this, Otto talked to Ruben about how the realty people were trying to push them out. As Otto finished up and tried to leave, Ruben grabbed the garden hose, as if he knew Otto's real plans, but Otto pulled it away from him. Otto sat in his car in the garage, trying to end his life with carbon monoxide poisoning using the hose. As he waited to die, he remembered a dinner date with Sonia. She had noticed he didn't order any food for himself. Otto admitted he felt hopeless because he couldn't join the army and was struggling to find work, so he expected Sonia to leave him. But just as he was about to leave, Sonia grabbed his hand and kissed him in front of everyone who cheered for them. Otto was jolted back to reality when he heard Marisol banging on the garage door. Tommy had fallen from the ladder and was in the hospital. And Marisol needed Otto to give her a ride since she didn't have a driver's license. Otto was puzzled but decided to help. At the hospital, Otto sat with Luna and Abby, reading them a story in a funny voice. The girls had started calling him Abuelo Otto, or Grandpa Otto in Spanish. They were approached by a hospital clown named Beppo, who wanted to entertain the girls. Beppo asked for a quarter for a trick, and Otto handed over Sonia's quarter, insisting on getting it back when he was done. After performing the trick, Beppo gave back a different quarter, which Otto noticed. Upset, Otto started to physically confront Beppo, making the clown cry. The hospital staff then reprimanded Otto. Later, Otto took the family home, and Marisol noticed him giving a slight smile. The next morning, Marisol found the cat lying in the snow, barely alive. With help from Jimmy and Otto, they warmed the cat up, and Jimmy took it home since Otto didn't want it. Otto then drove to the train station, thinking about how he'd graduated with an engineering degree and asked Sonia to marry him. As he walked toward the tracks, he seemed ready to hurt himself, but an old man nearby suddenly passed out and fell onto the tracks. While everyone else just filmed, Otto jumped down to help the man back onto the platform. He then stood on the tracks, waiting for the train, until another man pulled him to safety. The people around looked at Otto like a hero for saving the other man. He went back home, and while he was in the garage, Marisol came by and gave him a drawing Abby had made, where he was the only one in color. Jimmy then showed up with the cat, saying he had an allergic reaction and leaving Otto stuck with it. Otto asked the cat to get into the box, and surprisingly, it actually did. Otto took the cat to Sonia's grave, talking to her about how he now had a cat and was figuring out what to do with it. He promised to join her soon because he missed her. The next day, Otto ran into a teenager named Malcolm who was delivering papers on his bike. Otto gave him a hard time, but Malcolm told him that Sonia had been his teacher and was the first to recognize his transgender identity, calling him by his new name and getting other teachers to do the same. Otto ended up being friendly with Malcolm after hearing that. Marisol greeted Otto after learning how to drive with Andy, and Otto thought Andy taught her the wrong way. Later, Otto went to Marisol's house, saying he couldn't stand seeing one idiot teaching another how to drive, so he took Marisol out for driving lessons in his manual car.
No more grown-ups. Come on!
Marisol was nervous and kept stalling. At a traffic light, she said she sucked at driving, but Otto reassured her she was learning. When the light turned green, she was freaking nervous, and the car didn't move, which made a guy in a pickup truck honk at her. Otto got pretty heated with the guy, telling him to stop honking since Marisol was learning. He went back to the car and reminded her of all she had achieved, raising 2 kids, moving from afar, learning a new language, getting an education, and managing a family with a nitwit husband. With this in mind, learning to drive would be easy for her, since if many idiots could do it, so could she. Feeling more confident, Marisol drove much better. They ended up at a pastry shop where Otto used to go with Sonia, and he got Marisol a Swedish eclair that they both liked. Otto talked with Marisol about how things were when he and Sonia first moved to the neighborhood. They were good friends with Ruben and Anita, but he and Ruben had some disagreements over cars. Otto liked Chevys while Ruben was a Ford guy. Marisol asked Otto if he could babysit Luna and Abby while she and Tommy went on a date. The following day, Otto helped Malcolm fix his bike chain before a young woman named Sherry Kenzie, a social media journalist, approached him. She wanted to interview him about rescuing the guy who fell on the train tracks, but he turned her down. Marisol stopped by again, offering to help clean out his stuff, including some old coats of Sonia's. Otto got upset and angrily refused her help. Things got even worse when the Di and Marika agent came around again, saying they had a file on Otto and knew about his heart condition. Otto started feeling really stressed, and when Marisol tried to help, he just went inside and ignored her when she kept knocking on his door. Otto grabbed a rifle and noticed a cap from Niagara Falls, which brought back a painful memory with Sonia. She was about 6 months pregnant when they were in a terrible crash on the way back from the falls. The crash left her paralyzed and they lost their baby. Suddenly, a knock at the door startled Otto, making him accidentally shoot the ceiling. It turned out to be Malcolm, who asked if he could crash on the couch because his dad had kicked him out for not accepting his transgender identity. Otto said yes, and Malcolm stayed over. The next morning, Malcolm made coffee and breakfast for Otto and joined him on his patrols. Then, Jimmy came by and let Otto in on the sketchy stuff that Di and Marika was up to. They were planning to kick Ruben and Anita out of their house after finding out Anita had Parkinson's. Rumor had it they were working with Chris to sell his parents' house. Jimmy mentioned that Anita and Ruben didn't tell Otto or Sonia about her Parkinson's because they felt Otto had enough on his plate. Otto then visited Anita's house to ask about the documents she had received from Di and Marika, as well as records of her and Ruben's conditions. While she was getting the documents, Otto spoke to Ruben. After everything they had been through, he apologized for being an idiot and promised to sort things out. Otto needed to make a call, so he asked Marisol if he could use her phone. She refused because he had yelled at her and ignored her knocking for a long time, leaving her worried. Otto apologized and told her he needed to call someone because the realty people were about to force Ruben and Anita out of their house. Marisol agreed to let Otto use her phone. Before that, he opened up to Marisol, explaining that he had been trying to commit suicide after losing Sonia. He also mentioned that he was removed as the head of the Homeowners Association for attacking a board member who wouldn't allow a ramp for Sonia, which he referred to as a coup. Marisol finally understood what happened to Otto, and he knew exactly who to call. The Di and Marika agent showed up with a few goons to kick Ruben and Anita out of their home. But Otto had already called Sherry and her crew to film him exposing the company for illegally accessing medical records on him and Anita, and for lying about being in touch with Chris to sell his parents' house. In reality, Chris hadn't been in touch with them for years and was living in Japan. The agent tried to argue that no one could properly care for Ruben and Anita given their conditions. But Jimmy stepped up and said he would because they're like family to him. With the bad publicity mounting, the agents were forced to leave. Otto told Ruben that they'd managed to make the agents back off. He saw Ruben smiling and reaching out for a handshake. Just when everyone thought they'd won, Otto suddenly collapsed from his heart condition. Marisol waited for him in the hospital. When he woke up, she cheered him up. The cardiologist told Marisol she was listed as Otto's next of kin and that he had an enlarged heart. Marisol laughed at the irony of someone like Otto having a too big of a heart. Not long after, Marisol went into labor and gave birth to a baby boy named Marco. During the celebration for Marco's birth, Otto surprised Marisol with a crib he had built for the son he and Sonia were supposed to have and gifted it to her for Marco. Later, Otto took the family to Sonia's grave to introduce them. A few years went by, and Otto gave Malcolm his car, saying he saved him from having to drive a Volkswagen. He also left a letter on his nightstand. One day, after buying a new Chevy, Otto took Marisol and the girls out for a ride. Months later, Tommy noticed Otto hadn't shoveled the snow from his walk. When he and Marisol went to check on him, they found Otto dead in his bed, having passed away from his heart condition. As Marisol wept over him, Tommy found a letter Otto had written to her. In it, Otto assured Marisol he hadn't taken his own life but knew his time was near. He arranged for his house, money, and cat to be left to Marisol's family to support the kids' education. He also told her not to let Tommy drive the Chevy. Otto signed the letter as Abuelo Otto. The family held a funeral for Otto as he wanted, which had a decent turnout. Jimmy and Malcolm promised to continue Otto's rounds, and Marisol used the money to build a youth center. She definitely didn't let Tommy drive the car. Otto was buried next to Sonia. Enjoyed the video? Please subscribe, like, comment, and share. Until next time, take care and see you in the next video.